Well, everybody, welcome again to the art and science of complex sales. I'm here with a man that likely needs introduction, but we're going to introduce him anyways. Andy Paul, welcome to the program.
Paul, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. For those of you that don't know, Andy is one of the best sales authors in the past 15 years, has some awesome books, started with Zero Time Selling, Amp Up Your Sales, and his recent hit, which is Sell Without Selling Out. And he's also a podcast host, very similar to me, podcast host, but you've been doing it for a lot longer than I have. So Sales Enablement with Andy Paul. So
1,125 episodes or something. Yeah.
Dang. I'm only, I don't know, 1,115 short, something like that. But we're
well, you two stick with it for a few years. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. 7+ years. So
that's awesome. I didn't realize it had been that long.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So we were going to go on script, but we're going to go completely off. What has been your favorite moment from sales podcasting?
Oh, God, I don't know that I have a favorite moment. I wish I could say that. After a while, they start blending in a little bit.
Okay, favorite impact you've made in terms of sales podcasting.
Well, I think when people reach out and say, "Look, I listen to it as often as I can, and it's had an influence on how I sell, or it's had influence on how I manage." Early on, I think this first or second year, get this LinkedIn message from a CRO who said, I've read your books and I listen to the podcast and basically, manage my team based on what you do, what you say. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a lot of responsibility. But, it's gratifying. There are a lot of people who find value in what the information that's been shared on the show. Yeah, because I bring on smart people, or hopefully smart people, 1,125 episodes with repeats, probably 800-900, distinct guests, and everybody's got something to share. I mean, I don't always agree with everybody that comes on the show, which I don't expect. And some people are great about defending their thesis and things that are important to them. Sometimes we get into really honest, frank conversations about that, because I see that sort of part of my role is to push back against things that I think are become sort of traditional or status quo or just old-fashioned in the extreme in sales. And surprisingly, a lot of what passes for quote-unquote modern selling these days is very old-fashioned. And just trying to move the ball forward, right? Trying to help the profession. And the fact that people get value from it is that extremely gratifying and makes it worth doing.
Well, you do a great job at it. And I'm going to bring it back to one of the reasons we do this one, which is we dive into sales, right? And one of the things you said there, old fashioned versus new fashioned, what is sales? Like to you, I asked this to everybody that's on there. What is sales?
Yeah. And so I phrase it a little bit different. Is what is selling, right? As I like to use the verb, because what we do is we sell, right? Sales is sort of a profession, but we're sellers. What we do is selling. And I write about this in the latest book, Sell Without Selling Out, is draw that distinction between the way so many sellers are trained as sort of this fundamentally persuasion-based approach to sales, right? My job as a seller, people are led to believe my job as a seller is to go out and persuade somebody to buy my product. And I think that's completely wrong, right? I don't think our job is to persuade the buyer. I think our job as sellers is to listen to our buyers, understand the things that are most important to them in terms of the problems they face and the outcomes they want to achieve by addressing those problems, and then help them get that, right? So it's sales, is selling as a human-first, service-based approach to helping people solve a problem and achieve a specific outcome. If you go with the perspective that your job is to persuade somebody to buy your product, well, it's all about you, right? The starting position is you as a seller, what you need from them, as opposed to helping them determine what's important to them and then helping them get that. And I just found over the course of my career, it's a long career at this point, selling hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products and services that, treat somebody like a human being and understand that you as the human at the end of the day are really the key differentiator in the mind of the buyer between buying from one company and buying from another company. Increasingly so, this is the case. If you have that in mind and you have that service approach, then yeah, you do what I call selling in as opposed to selling out.
So what is, I latched onto a couple words there.
Sure.
When you say treat someone else like a human, right? What does that entail? Like,
well, they're not a target, right? We talk about we sell to someone. That's the lingo we use. So we're going to sell this to them as if somehow they're resisting and that we have to sort of force ourselves on them. And I think selling is a collaborative act, something we do with the buyer. Again, if you go in with this idea that your job is to persuade them to buy your product, then you've set this up as adversarial from the beginning, which is, hey, I need something from you. And if my job is to persuade you to buy my product or service, I don't have a huge incentive to really dig down deep and really understand, the things that are most critical to you, because it doesn't really matter. My job's still to persuade you to buy my product. But if you take the other approach, which is, my job is to listen, really understand what's really driving you. What are the real priorities? What are the things that are most important? Because I found over the years, every opportunity I've worked on and that I've won or lost is there's always one thing that's more important than all the others. And it's our job as sellers to find out what that is and connect it to the value that we bring from our products and our services as a company to help the buyer achieve a certain outcome. And that starts, like I said, is from a service mentality, which is, hey, they're a human that has a problem. I'm a human that potentially can help. I'm not a process. I'm not a tactic. I'm not a methodology. I'm just here to help.
But can humans, so tell me about the relationship then between that human there to help and the process, methodology, the tactic. Like, where does that intertwine?
Well, it's a good question, right? Because it depends on sort of the method and the tactic and so on. It's really useful for all of us to understand various methodologies, various approaches, because there's so many people that have preceded us that have had experiences that are valuable that we can learn from. But it's also important we take those and incorporate those into our own style of selling. I believe that there's 2 million salespeople in the world. There's 2 million distinct sales methodologies. And that's the way it should be, because what you want to do is take these various influences that you've come across, whether it's in learning from a client or learning from a book or a sales training course or whatever. It's really incumbent upon you to become the best version of you, right? Because you're going to be the best of how you best can serve your buyers. And so that requires that you go out and you expose yourself to a wide variety of influences, pick and choose the ones that are going to help you achieve and help your buyers achieve what they want, and then make that your own. That's what I really talk about in Sell Without Selling Out. Is the subtitle is a guide to success on your own terms. And I think one of the real failings we've had in B2B sales, especially in the last 20 years, is that we've become much more process-oriented, detailed process. That's why that's due to the fact we can a lot more transparency into what sellers are doing because the technology is available, whether it's call recordings or CRM systems that didn't exist 15, 20, 25 years ago. And there's a lot of value in that data. But in the hands of managers who don't want to really dig down and get to know the people that are working for them and understand, just like you do with your client, your customer, as a manager, your job is to listen to the people that work for you, understand the things that are most important to them in terms of the problems and challenges they have and the outcomes they want to achieve with their lives. Your job as a manager, help them get that. Right? It's no different than the relationship between a seller and a customer. And we've really strayed from that in many cases. So now it's all about, well, are you doing the requisite number of activities, number of calls and outreaches? And we're tracking the data, but I think in the process we've really lost sight of the individual. And we've seen data that supports that in terms of Uncrushed last year had a survey they released of B2B sellers. I forget how many thousands participated, but huge incidence of mental health issues and depression and anxiety. And we're in a very performance-oriented profession, but we're exacerbating these potential issues just the way we manage people. So part of what I want to do is say, look, you have permission to be yourself. In fact, you have the obligation really to be yourself in sales, is not try to be someone else. But again, great trend in the last 10, 15 years in sales is let's use this technologies that exist to make everybody like this standard we have, right? If the number one person in your team is Mike, let's have everybody sell like Mike. And just the wrong way to go about it. Not everybody can be Mike. Only Mike can be Mike. Take some things from Mike and integrate into who you are and become the best version of Paul. That's what you want.
Let me see if I can kind of recap.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Let's see if I can recap the integration. No, I think it's awesome. It's awesome. You got to, and you're passionate about it and it works. But I think what I heard from that is when I talk about process or technology, it's the integration of that into you being the best you can be, not necessarily the manipulation of that for you to be somebody else. Like you have to
don't
sell.
Be a slave to it, right? I mean, I'm the sum of all the influences I've come across in my life. I've taken, numerous training courses, seriously, just in the last 7 years with the podcast, I probably read more than 500 sales books. Probably more than anybody else out there has written. I read the books. If the guest comes on the show and they've written a book, I read their book. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't help but be influenced by that. You learn things, listen to podcasts. But again, over decades, I remember in my first job out in the field, had the cassette deck, putting in the Zig Ziglar tape. Yeah, I'm sure I've taken bits and pieces from all of that. But I'm not a spin seller. I'm not a Sandler seller. I'm not a Ziglar, whatever. A mix of those things that have worked for me and that I continue to build upon.
So tell me the importance of coaching in that, because that seems to be an absolute critical piece of this. When you talked about sales managers and sales coaching, tell me a little bit more.
Well, we've got this problem in sales today. You read the surveys about sales coaching, sort of paraphrasing, but in general, what the data says is 80% of managers say that they coach their sellers at least once a week. And it's 80% of sellers report receiving no coaching at all. And so there's this huge, and I'm being serious about that. I mean, it's that distinct where the managers report, I'm doing it. The sellers say, I'm not getting it. Mm-hmm. So we have this huge perception gap that exists from research that's been done on various sources. This number that always sort of comes out is, the single most important thing you can do to uplift sales performance is effective coaching, which I agree with 100%. And I think the number that's sort of associated with that is like a 19% uplift through effective, consistent coaching. But where managers these days, frontline managers, feel torn oftentimes is they feel this obligation to prioritize reporting upwards in the chain as opposed to helping develop the people that work for them. And given the sort of increasing sort of process orientation in sales is, again, I believe, looking at the data and also experience with the companies, as you see managers sort of look like sellers are sort of these interchangeable cogs in a machine, right? It's really the process in their minds. They're saying the process is what's paramount. If I can just find the right person to plug into it and execute that process, everything's going to be great. But that's not the case, right? As we know from data that average win rates in B2B sales on modest size transactions like 100K or higher, it's 17%. There's this data that came out a year ago, survey of 5,500 companies. You can't say sales is working if that's the average win rate. So something's falling down along the way. And I think it's, we can sort of apportion responsibility in various ways, but certainly frontline managers, I think, have the largest share of that responsibility in terms of failure to achieve at higher levels. Responsibility, I don't say it's blame, because I think frontline managers generally, just like sellers in general, unless you're working in a really big company, you just don't get the training. You don't get the coaching yourself that you need from your manager, whether it's a CEO or a CRO or whatever. And so sort of this failure up and down the chain to invest sufficiently in the frontline managers who are the people that make things happen. I mean, if you read, hopefully people don't think this is political, but like if you read accounts about what's happening in the war in Ukraine and how poorly the Russian forces are performing, is they contrast it with the United States, more modern militaries, where The reason the Army works is they've got this core of low-level, the sergeants, basically, right? Middle management, who are incredibly well trained and given responsibilities and authority. And that's absent, apparently, in the Russian army. Well, that's the equivalent of our frontline managers in sales. And we're not investing enough in them. And I go as extreme as to make the case that if we take all the money we invest on sales training in the United States, which is, well, LinkedIn had a number in their annual sales report, about $15 billion each year, of which I would hazard a guess probably 95% of that's spent on training individual sellers. I say flip the balance. Spend 90% of that annual budget on training your frontline managers, and we'd have a dramatically different outcome than what we have today. We'd have people that are more well-managed, more well-developed, more perhaps inspired and motivated by effective leadership. So that's just a huge gap. We need to invest in our frontline managers and even our middle management, because their focus is all on sort of the activity and the process and not on the people.
One of the key things that has been a theme across a lot of the podcasts that I'm doing and just frankly, a lot of conversations that I'm having in sales, is the fact that it's not just sales training that people are needing. It's truly self-leadership and leadership training to drive impact, right? And coaching training. Like, how can I be an effective coach? If I can lead myself, how do I help others lead themselves? Mm-hmm. And it really ties to this human element that you're talking to, that while process is wonderful. I love a sales process. I love a good sales methodology. Like I'm a geek that way. I think it's fantastic. But I've always told people that they need to be able to know it enough that they can forget it and do it in their sleep, because that's how they just, that's why you learn a script, so you can forget it. So you internalize the information, right?
Right.
But back to this idea of being able to have leaders that then can help you drive, and it's not even drive results, help people walk with the customers towards results, is absolutely critical. And that, I think that's a big gap. I think people see leadership training towards the executives, like an executive needs a leadership training. No, it's how do you lead yourself? How do you lead your team? How do you have the right habits? How do you coach? Anyhow, I'm on a rant now.
No, but you're absolutely right. Well, I think, I think one of the major problems that exist with sort of the way we're set up with how we envision management these days is I draw the analogy to helicopter parents. And I think to some larger extent, we sort of infantilize sellers because we micromanage them to death, right? And just as you would with a helicopter parent. And we want to track every activity and everything they do, and the number of calls they make and so on. And you see this in the expectations. You read things on LinkedIn or wherever, and it's like somebody saying, well, here's the key to setting 5 meetings by making 100 dials, as opposed to saying, well, you need to set 5 meetings. If you can do that in 5 calls, wonderful, right? That's where we want to get you to go. And that's fantastic. But that's not the way people look at it, right? It's like, hey, we need this level of activity and we need to micromanage you to death. And we need to set expectations for sellers as leaders, inspire them, build trust with them, show them the direction you want to go, but then give them the freedom to go execute that according to the way that makes best sense for them. Instead of saying, look, we've got one way to do this, and we've turned this into a mechanized assembly line process. You can make the argument that, hey, maybe at top of funnel that makes sense. You want to be more like that. But unfortunately, you see that applied even once opportunities enter the pipeline. And that's not how people are going to perform at their best. And so to take sort of extend on a point you made, is I think sales leadership starts with the individual contributor, right? If I am out dealing with an opportunity, dealing with a prospect, ultimately what I'm doing is I'm trying to build trust and inspire them to take action with me. And that's what leaders do. Stephen M.R. Covey just came out with his latest book, which is Trust and Inspire. Trust and Inspire, about leadership. It starts with the individuals. And if people become adept doing that and understanding from a mindset perspective, that's fundamentally your role as a salesperson, is to help, is in a leadership role with your prospects. Then you'll take that with you when you get promoted to management, if you want to take that step into management, because you'll see as, wow, this is how I work with my prospects to help them achieve something that's important to them. I can take that same mindset into managing a group of sellers and saying, yeah, this is how I work with them, build trust, inspire them through my own actions and my own words to take actions that will help them achieve what they want to achieve.
So let's dive into a topic that I know that you're really passionate about, because this is something that is, I personally believe, like as you're defining sales this way, that a human is the one that does this, right? So you have this idea that you've talked to me a couple times about, and your book Sell Without Selling Out defines a lot of this, but it's this idea of this human centric, but also machine proof, right? Selling. Right. Tell me about those thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, human first selling is based on a couple of concepts. One is that you as the human are the first line of differentiation, and the most important line of differentiation in the mind of the buyer when they make their decision. So we know from data, and this sort of first came to light, I think, or first publicized back at the Challenger sale in 2011, I think based on research that came from CEB/Gartner, that in the B2B world is that 53% of the buyer's decision, purchase decision, is based upon their experience with the individual seller. And there's further research, Gartner, about trust. And when buyers talk about trust, the most important trust was not with the vendor company, is with the seller that was representing the vendor. They trusted the seller more than the company they worked for. And there's been more recent research done by a company in Australia that does extensive win-loss analyses on enterprise buying and selling. And they had summarized their findings over, as a result, all these hundreds and thousands of interviews with buyers, about 9 reasons why you win big deals, 9 reasons why you lose big deals. And none of those reasons had to do with the product, the functionality, the features, the pricing. Well, pricing was mentioned once. It was your price was too cheap. That was a negative, but never the price was too expensive. All the factors had to do with these human elements, right? How building the connection with the buyer, building trust, building emotional connections, being able to tell a story. And yet we continue to sort of train our sellers on tactics and product and methodologies and so on. Not that that stuff's unimportant, but after a while, as I like to say, it's like pouring water into a full cup. People are full; they're not getting anything from it. The cup just overflows as you add more training to it. So we're training, taking humans and training them how to be sellers. What we're not doing is taking these sellers and training how to be human. You know, how to connect with another person, right? How to build that fundamental connection, relationship with a buyer that opens the door to building credibility and trust. Now, that's an innate human behavior. And we think, gosh, everybody can do that, right? No. Why do we assume everybody can do that? But it just gets ignored in training. We've got a whole, now 2 generations of near digital natives, or digital natives and near digital natives, who've come into the workforce, who spent their entire lives growing up fundamentally connecting with people through asynchronous messaging, right? And social media and texting and so on, as you and I would have done if we were, teenagers in the last 20 years. That's different than getting on a phone and talking to somebody. And so there's nothing wrong with people that haven't had that experience of building these connections in a synchronous mode, but they need to be taught. They need to be given exposure to ways to do that. Something, again, that they can integrate in their personal style that aligns with their personal strengths, so they can have these types of conversations. Yet we just make the assumption they know how to do that.
I think something that's really important there is also this word permission. Like I remember one coaching episode I had with a guy a bit back. His performance just, I don't take any credit for it. All I said was, you need to be you. Like you're a really fun guy. You're awesome to be around. I love laughing and joking with you. It's great to go and get a drink. But you know how much of that comes through in a sales call? None. Like absolutely zero. because it was got to say the right thing, got to be professional, got to have the right words, got to try and persuade. I said, you know all that. You know all of it backwards and forwards. Now forget it and just go be you. And this is within, and again, because I do love process. I do love that. But it's meant to empower. It's meant to embolden. It's meant to enable. Like you can have a great football team. A great football team has a process. We just had the Super Bowl a bit ago, but they have a process for calling plays. But you got to know that really darn well, and then you just go audible. You go audible as you.
Yeah, you see this. I'm a huge soccer fan and basketball fan, and a word you oftentimes hear. I mean, Steve Kerr uses it all the time about the Golden State Warriors, other soccer coaches, is they want players to bring their personality to their play. Yeah, you know the basics. You know what our plays are. You know the formations we run, or you know the tactics we're employing. But you're not bringing your personality to the game, and that's why they brought you onto the team. Not just your talent, what you might call your talent, your potential. Part of that is your personality. And that's, to your point, precise. It's exactly true in selling as well. As sure, great. You know the product, you know the customer, you know our methods that we're using, you know our playbooks. Yeah, bring yourself to the game, because that's going to become a differentiator. Right? I look at my career, spent the part of my career was building teams or as an individual contributor, and then building sales teams. I was not a conventional salesperson, introvert. I was in selling really complex technical products. I was a history major in college. Reasonably smart person. I knew the products enough as a lay person, but I was not an expert at it. But when I look back on the big deals I won, sure, they were a team effort, for sure. Couldn't have won without the team. But also it was me, right? And I know the buyer ultimately was buying me because I was the point person. And that was just a matter of bringing myself to the game. And I have a very specific way to do it, just because it fits my personality. And I let the personality show. I had managed to sort of encourage me to do that early in my career, and it gave me that. I said that sort of permission, as you talked about, to be myself, because, hey, that is a strength ultimately at the end of the day.
I think in that everything we're talking about here directly ties into this thesis you've been developing about essentially machine-proof selling, right? So if I wouldn't be on a sales podcast today if I didn't mention GPT and that type of stuff, right? I mean, ChatGPT this, ChatGPT that, but,
sure.
But that human element is the machine-proof.
Well, yeah. I mean, the technology is amazing. I've been playing with ChatGPT. I think it's incredible. And what we're going to see, whether it's ChatGPT 4 that's coming with Bing, or whatever Google's got up their sleeve, or even rumors now of Amazon, fantastic stuff. But it takes you so far, right? It doesn't take you all the way. And there are things that machines just won't be able to act like we do. And I was like, I wrote about this a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I'm machine proof. There are things that I can do that machines will never be able to fully replicate. Parts of it they will, and it's down to these human things, ability to connect, creativity, sparks of inspiration, taking disparate data points and synthesizing them into a question or into a potential solution, out of whole cloth. Because if it hasn't happened before, AI is based on everything that's happened in the past, right? And pattern matching. It's not going to come up with this on its own. And I love the book I cited often called Humans Are Underrated, by Jeff Colvin. And the subtitle being What Top Achievers Know That Machines Never Will. And as he writes, is based on his research, is that the primary skill of top achievers, or attribute, if you will, of top achievers in the 21st century, are those people who learn how to become more intensely human. Become more human, not less. The future of selling is more human, not less human, right? Because sure, you'll see and we've seen this already over the last 10, 15, 20 years, is the range of products that are being sold completely on a self-service basis, has expanded quite a bit. That's going to continue to happen. But products with any sort of complexity, products with risk associated with them, products perhaps of a certain cost point, price point, it's still going to require humans. And the machine experience for the buyer to a certain point in that process, they're all going to be the same, right? My bot's going to be just like your bot, pretty much. And then what becomes that differentiator? Well, it's that human element that you bring to it. The human element to help the buyer better understand the problem, by asking different and better questions to help them better understand, to understand why the buyer, and this I think is really the critical point. There's research about use of AI-driven decision assist systems, if you will, in the medical world. And they've actually been used in the medical world probably for longer than most other places. And what they find is there's sort of this curve after which patients stop trusting the machine, if you will. And part of it has to do with the seriousness of the problem they're dealing with, is they want to talk to a human, right? But part of what's driving that is, even in things that are relatively common, is that humans don't believe, or humans always believe, that their situation is unique, right? I may have the same disease that 2 million other people in the world have, but man, no one's experiencing it just like me, right? Mm-hmm. And when you go to the doctor, you want to make sure they understand just how you feel unique. This is unique to you, how you feel. Well, this is true in selling and business as well. I can tell you, over 40 plus years of selling, at hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment and services. Even though I was selling in industries that I sold many deals in, I learned, this is one of the secrets, I believe, to my success over time, was I learned that pretty early on that, this company may look just like everybody else, them selling to, but they think they're different. And you have to acknowledge the fact that they think they're unique. And when you do that, suddenly you're in a realm that machines can't touch, because you've made that connection with that person. And you're saying, look, I hear you. I understand you, right? I'm making you feel understood because I'm acknowledging that you feel you're unique. And when you do that, you're giving value to the words and beliefs of the people you're dealing with. Now think about this. To me, this is really powerful, is you're giving value to the things that are important to them. And if you don't acknowledge that, then you're not. So you're like every other seller. Oh, you're just like, yeah. Oh, yeah. You talk to a buyer and you say, you ask a question. They say, oh, we've got, XYZ problem. You say, oh, yeah. Yeah, we've been dealing with a lot of companies. I think we sold like 10 companies just like yours in the last. What you just said was, you're trained as a seller to give that as a point of social proof. What you just told the buyer was, you're not unique. You're just like everybody else. I'm not here to listen to you and really understand you. Here are training sellers. Oh no, refer to all these other companies we use that would just like them. That's not what they want to hear. They want to hear that you understand that they're unique and they're different, even if it's just in this small degree. Well, that's a human difference. Mm-hmm. Machine's not going to do that. Machine's just going to assume you're like everybody else, because this is it's based on the data that the machine's looking at. And so it's these small things that really set you apart and enable you to win a higher fraction of your opportunities if you take the time to say, okay, what in the mind of the buyer makes them unique? And this is last point. This is the definition of acumen. Acumen is not understanding why and how one situation is just like every other situation you come across. Your acumen is understanding why it's different.
I'm taking a note on that. I think everybody should take a note on that. I'm picturing in my head, right? And I'm going to use the math term wrong because, I graduated high school. I think it's degradation to the mean, or it's coming back to the mean. I think it's
regression to the mean.
Regression to the mean. There you go. Well, regression to the mean. It seems like there's there's always going to be a natural regression to the mean if you are looking at it from it's like something I've dealt with before, right? And a machine can see that, but you'll only give the best of all the average answers that have been out there for all history, instead of saying, well, what makes you uniquely different?
Yeah. Let's really dig into that. I was saying that you as a seller, that's what you're saying to the buyers. Let's really dig into it. And that's what I write about in Sell Without Selling Out. This is, there's 4 pillars of what I call selling in, which are the opposite of selling out, which is the conventional, traditional salesy behavior. Instead, we focus on these innate human attributes of connection, curiosity, understanding, and generosity to, again, listen to our buyers, understand things that are most important to them, and then help them get that. And when you do that, again, you set yourself apart from your competitors. You set yourself apart from more mechanized selling experiences. All of this talk that's come out that's become really prominent in the last 3 years, especially during the course of the pandemic. We've seen Gartner, we've seen it from all sorts of analyst firms. I think Forrester maybe was one of the last ones, or McKinsey maybe. Buyers want a self-service experience, which is just so the analysis is so superficial. It's stunning coming from these firms. What they want is somebody to help them make a good decision.
Yes.
And if the alternative is I have to deal with Mr. Super Salesy coming out and just trying to persuade me to buy their product without really reaching this level of understanding, then hell yeah, I'll do self-service.
I got a picture of a phone tree. I got a picture of, for some reason, I'm not going to blast any cell phone carriers that I've had to call into support for. I don't want to press 1. I don't want to press 2. I don't want to be routed. I just want you on the phone, and I want you to help me. Please.
Yeah. I can't. And there's this fundamental misunderstanding of what buyers go through to make a decision. And we have no shortage of these expensive consultants who come in and write these, help you craft these complex, elaborate selling processes that supposedly, mirror a buying process. And it's like really missing the point, right? Is buyers fundamentally go through three stages, if you will. It's very simple. And if sellers can sort of picture this in mind, it really help them. They go through 3 stages. There's a what stage, a how stage, and a who stage. So try and do. What stage? What is the problem I'm trying to solve? And what are the outcomes I can achieve by solving the problem, by addressing the problem? Now, in the early part of their buying journey, that's consuming the biggest share of their time and attention, is trying to understand what they can do, what the problem is. This is what they need sellers to help them with, right? This is our job as sellers, as I said before, is to listen, understand what we're trying to help them define and understand the problem and to find the outcomes they can achieve. But what happens? We train sellers to go pitch, right? Go pitch your product. Well, you're pitching before you even understand what the story is, right? Before the buyer even understands what their problem is. So we've got this at the beginning, the vast majority of cases, with this huge misalignment between the seller and the buyer. Because the buyer, I'm trying to make sense of what's sort of going on, what I think my problem is. And I have an idea, obviously, but I could use your help to, in your experience, to more, finely define that. And I could use your help within your experience to help me understand what I might possibly achieve by addressing my problem. But you're in here just pitching your product at me. It's like, how's that help me? Doesn't help me at all. And I learned pretty early on in my career, it's like, oh, okay. This is actually like a sale within the sale. If I could win the what stage, meaning we come out of the what stage with the buyer pretty much aligned with me on a vision of what they can achieve by addressing their problem. And I start help them through, you call it the challenge sale or whatever, help them better understand the problem and the breadth and scope of the problem they're trying to solve. Oh, I walked into the house stage in the lead, right? Because in the buyer's mind, I sort of started designing myself into their mental solution for the problem. So that's a specific win. I wanted to win that. I wanted to win the what stage. Well, then you get to the how stage. Well, if the buyer is sort of using you as the template for what they want to achieve, they're sort of putting everything in the frame of your solution when they're out looking. Well, oh, I looked at this other vendor. Oh, you can't do that thing. You can't help me get to where I want to go in this dimension. Oh, well, I'm not sure I look at that as positively as I might have before. So then you look at, well, here's the second sale within the sale is the how. I want to win the how. I want to get myself firmly defined into the buyer's plans. You know, look at it like sort of analogous to, if you're selling a chip that's going to be designed into a larger board design. Well, you have vendors that are trying to sell their chips into, cell phones, right? Mm-hmm. I want to get my chip designed into that. Well, I want to get my solution designed into the buyer's specification. Because when they get to the end of the how stage, your buyer develops this final set of requirements based on what we really need, based on our conversations with vendors. I'm going to come up with this final set of requirements at the end of the how stage. And then I'm going to go make a decision about who is going to help me achieve what I want to achieve. Well, again, I learned if I get to the end of the how stage and the buyer's requirement basically looks like my product or my service, my odds of winning the business pretty high. So you want to think strategically about, really, there's almost 4 stages, but there's distinct wins you have to have. The first stage, which is not a distinct stage, but I call it the why you stage, which is, why does the buyer want to talk to you in the first place? Right? Your first interactions with them, they're going to make a decision about you. Are you worth my time and attention or you're not? Mm-hmm. If you're not worth my time and attention, you're not going to get it. So you're not even going to get a chance to sort of compete on the what stage. So you think about it from a seller, there are 3 wins, 3 sales within a sale. Basically, you want to win before you get to the point where they make their decision about who you are. And if you're deliberate about trying to win it and look at it that way, again, makes life a lot easier, especially on more complex sales, because now you're completely aligned with the buyer. Mm-hmm. It's not about discovery, qualification, blah, 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 which have no meaning to the buyer at all. It's, as a sales manager, you could look at and say, okay, well, where are we with the buyer? Well, they're in the what stage. Where are we? Great. So how are we helping them with the what stage? Well, you're basically doing discovery and qualification in that stage. Well, this is what we've come up with so far. This is what we really understand is the most important thing. We think we're good. This is a perspective that's aligned with how the buyer is buying. Simple. What, how, who? And we sort of just assume that as sellers, oftentimes, that the who is the most important decision they're making. It's sort of the least important. Third order decision.
Yeah, we have this aligns so well with a lot of the foundational methodologies and that type of stuff that we're using. Like, I hear that and I think sales methodology. That's what I think. It's so, because it's not a process. It's not, you have to do this exactly here, but it's a fundamental methodology that puts the vision of the customer first, right? Mm-hmm. And how you get to that, right? There's tactics but how you get to that is through connection, curiosity, understanding, and generosity. So those 4 pillars. So
it's the heart of sales success are these human attributes. Yeah, you need to have product knowledge. You want to have customer knowledge. It's not these things are unimportant. Mm-hmm. But if you can sort of look at yourself in the mirror and think, there's 2 parts to me. One part is the part that's, I'll call what I know. And the other part is who I am. Mm-hmm. And lots of people can be the same as you in terms of what you know. But the distinction and the way you differentiate yourself isn't who you are with the buyer. And I said, we just don't spend enough time focusing on that. So it's just part of the reason why I wrote this book, and part of the reason why we, have this cohort-based course we call Selling School, Andy Paul Selling School, where we're teaching, the methods behind selling in, is because, as I said before, we do a great job training humans how to be sellers. We don't do a very good job at all of training sellers how to be human. And that's the edge. That's what top achievers know that machines never will, which is that the more of a human you are, the way that that's received by the buyer, the greater your odds of success.
Well, this has been a masterclass, Andy. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been awesome. I have one more thought. I got
Sure,
to throw it out
Go
there.
ahead.
Well, it's that you just said who I am and what I know, right? When people get that confused is when I see when they equate those to be the same thing, is a lot of times when I see sellers having a massive problem. Meaning when their identity is only in what they know, they can't bring the who they are to the party. And the who they are is what allows them to have a joke or have a laugh or have a, be comfortable with a CEO, right? You have every much as value as the CEO just by sitting here, right?
Exactly.
It's
but to a point, as extend what you just said is also it's the being human that enables you to take a risk. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I write about this in the book. Yeah, my friend Charlie Green, who was one of the co-authors of The Trusted Advisor, and one of the world's leading experts on trust. He talks about this idea is one way to build trust is to do, he calls it, bring a risky gift, BARG is the acronym, meaning that you're able to come to the buyer and feel comfortable enough to take a risk, to provide a point of view to them that you think they may not accept, or to challenge them with a concept that you think is one that may disturb the process that you're in right now, the motion, the momentum you have, but it's better in the long run. And that's who you are. Feeling comfortable with who you are in that environment is to say, I know this has value. Here's another thing, if you got a minute, is that, again, I think the analyst firms just don't understand when they talk about buyers want the self-service. And we framed it before. They do if the alternative is the pitchy, salesy person. When you think about why do customers want to talk to salespeople in the first place? And there's, again, science behind this. And there was I always butcher the guy's name. I think his name is Mark Groenvetter. He was a sociologist back in the early 70s, and he developed this concept through research called weak ties and strong ties. And there are people we have strong ties with and people we have weak ties with. And what he found is in studying organizations is that, sure, the people you work with day to day and day in and out, you develop these strong ties. The downside is, though, that you all know the same crap, right? You know all the same information. So he called it, what you know is redundant information. Well, when you're trying to make a substantive or substantial change in your business, right? You're going to invest in a new service, a new piece of software, something that's going to, change what you're doing. It doesn't really help you if you're all sitting here talking to yourselves and you don't know what you don't know. You're not willing to go ask somebody or have somebody come in and challenge you or provide a new perspective. And so self-aware organizations know that they need people with whom they have weak ties to come in and ask them the questions they don't think to ask themselves or don't know to ask themselves. Provide the perspectives they don't have the experience to understand. So it's not that your buyers want to talk to salespeople. I mean, I think probably in the recorded history of humankind, no buyers ever wanted to talk to a salesperson, right? I don't think my customers never woke up and said, God, I sure hope Andy calls me today. But they need to talk to you in order to do a good job, right? Your buyers want to do a good job. They want to make a good decision. And so they need your help to be able to gather and make sense of the information that will enable them to do that. So you have to be that person that adds enough value, is perceived to add enough value, perceived to have the buyer's interest at heart to be put in that position by the buyer to help them.
I'm going to get the concept wrong again, I'm sure, but the Jolt effect and Matt, I've had some conversations with him. Yeah, but he talks about radical candor. right? Mm-hmm. And so radical candor is very along those lines, which is that ability to add value, to challenge it when you need to challenge, to be able to actually understand your worth and bring it. You're not a doormat. You do serve. You are a leader. You are a servant. But to be able to have that radical candor and talk with somebody like that and say, I do think this is best, right? I don't think this is best, and is just absolutely. And I think that is, if I get back to your medical analogy, right? It's so critical for a doctor to be able to do that really well with somebody, right? And it's the same thing with a salesperson, is to be able to, they train doctors on it, right? Is to be able to
more or less successfully. Yeah.
Yes, my wife, exactly. But
my wife's a professor at a medical school, and not all doctors come out with good bedside manner, but they do teach them. And you hope it's, and it's true with sellers as well. As you want sellers to have that good bedside manner. Again, not all of them do, but those who do, you tend to be rewarded for it. And again, it's not about being a doormat. This is the thing that came out in the Challenger sale. I think Challenger sort of did a disservice, and I've given Brent Adamson a hard time a couple times on my show about this, is that they talk about the relational seller. Oh, the relational seller is bad. And there have been people who have taken that and run with that and said, oh, relationships are unimportant in sales because relational sellers. It's like, no, they're very specific about a certain type of seller that just what I call the unrestrained giver.
Yes.
I'm just going to give because I don't really want to engage you in conversation because you may say no, right? Or you may ask me a question I don't know the answer to. So I'm just going to give. Yeah, that's not the point. It's in order to really build credibility and trust, you need to have a relationship with the buyer. Yes. And, it requires that, sometimes you're going to take risks. Sometimes you're going to be blunt with them. That's Charlie Green's point of bring a risky gift. This is risky to, be that candid with someone, but the payoff is they know you have their best interest at heart, and you earn more trust as a result. So, again, that's part of being human is you have those conversations when it's really important, and you operate with somebody else's best interest at heart. You put their interest ahead of yours. You win more frequently.
I could go on with you probably for another 2 hours, 3 hours. I think we're at a point already where we have like two pods worth of content. So there you go. We didn't even get started on win rates, which I got to have you back and we got to talk about that. Okay.
Let's do that.
That you gave us that stat of 17%. I want to dive heavily with you and the impacts of that, but we'll save that for another time.
Okay. Yeah, that's really important. That's something I'm spending a lot of time writing and talking about this year is it shouldn't be this low. There's no reason for it to be this low. If you're in sales, your minimum standard should be that you're winning more than you're losing. And if you're not, as I wrote about in a LinkedIn post, the post today is also wrote about my book, is if your win rate's less than 50%, that means that in most cases, your buyers are buying from you in spite of you, not because of you. And it's a horrible place to be as a seller.
Well, we're going to dive deep on that next time. Mm-hmm. And Andy, last question: where do people find you? Where do people find you when they want to after listen to this?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Right, the easiest LinkedIn usual preamble, real Andy Paul after the /, or you can just email me at andy@andypaul.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. And everybody, thank you for sticking with us through this. And it was a masterclass from Andy Paul on
thank you.
And really appreciate it. And we'll sign out from now on the art and science of complex sales. Thank you very much. We'll see you.